welcome to another bookish video from me, Johanna, me, my dog and books. And today I'm giving you a slightly early October reading wrap up. How many books did I read? 14. I've been averaging like about 13 a month and I've just edged it. So I'm going to run through, if you've not watched any of my wrap-ups before, I tend to do a little bit of stats at the start and then I get into the books and chat to you about what I liked, what I didn't like, and everything in between. So, from my trusty laptop in the Storygraph world, oh no, I don't have any, yes, I read 14 books at a total of 5,085 pages, it says. My average sort of moods for what I read, apart from the fourth one I'm about to mention, right, most of these just seem to happen every month, which is dark, mysterious and tense, with a bit of funny. Try to think what was, I mean, I suppose some of these books were kind of funny. I suppose. I'll soon let you know. My pace was 77% medium, and only 8% was slow. I wonder if you can, does it ever tell you what that? Oh, I've put the silent house slow. I don't think I meant to do that. I think that was a trigger finger. Number of pages, most of the books I read were between 300 and 499. Lots of pages, so that's probably why. And only 7% was non-fiction, so the majority, oh yeah, one of them was one non-fiction, which I'll talk to you about. And then here is all the genres. 64% were in audio. As you may know if you've watched any of these before, I do love audiobooks. I love ebooks. I love print books. I love all of the books because they're all books and I'm privileged enough to be able to read them in all formats, should I wish. And my average star rating apparently was 3.63. That's not too bad. It's not too shabby, into no. So if I get into, I'll stop staring at my stats, but if I get into, how do you just look at what you read? Books I read. Don't really want to watch me, you don't really want to watch me scrolling through my Storygraph as I remind myself of what I've read. I'll get myself to the start. Oh, when was that one? Right, so the first one, way at the bottom here. The first one up for this month is one that I read thanks to Pride Book Tours, because I was on their book tour and I think I shared my review of this. The start of October is Friends of Dorothy by Sandi Toksvig. This is a lovely, queer, sort of wholesome, but also like heartfelt, with some morals of the story. So we follow a young couple, I can't remember their names, of course, Amber and Stevie. They move into their new home only to find that upstairs on the said red couch in the current home that they have just bought is Dorothy, who's like the 80-odd-year-old protagonist. She previously owned the home and she isn't going anywhere. And so the adventures ensue, and actually what you start to discover is that Dorothy is such a lovely glue for Amber and Stevie's relationship and the change in their life and the community around them. It's funny, it's heartfelt, and it just, do you know what, see, with all the stuff going on in the world, this was a delightful read. It was just delightful and I highly recommend it. I'm actually passing it on to my friend because I think she'll enjoy this. Then I read The Centre, which I got out the library, by Ayesha, Manazir, Siddiqi. And this had lots of like Black Mirror speculative fiction vibes, where we follow a main character, what is her name, Anissa, who is a translator primarily in, I think it's Urdu. Anyway, I can't remember, but currently she is in jobs predominantly translating Bollywood films, and she wants to get to where she can translate into more popular languages, where she's able to be a translator for literature. And so she hears through a love interest, which is kind of fleeting, that's not a spoiler, that there is this centre where you go to and you can learn a language and be fluent in it within 10 days, but it comes at a cost. So this had all the eerie sort of Black Mirror vibes. What I would say is and maybe it's because it's a debut, it just didn't quite, there was something missing in this for me. Just didn't quite deliver in the eeriness. If you can hear snoring, it's Lucy. Clearly my chat's, can you see? We've got Patty sleeping there and Lucy snoring there. It's a dog's life, innit? It's a dog's life. Anyway, yeah, so there's a cost for learning this new skill, and you start to see what that cost is, and it's pretty dark. But I did feel like there wasn't enough time spent on that, and that there was so much more it could have given. So, you know, I enjoyed it. It was an interesting read, but I landed at about 3 stars, which is still good. It's just not amazing. I was hoping it was going to be amazing, especially with this cover. Look at it. Look at it. Then there's my only non-fiction read of the month, which was Supremacy AI, ChatGPT and the Race That Will Change the World by Parmy Olson. I was gifted this by checking the publisher, Macmillan Business, and I am absolutely fascinated by work in digital marketing, and I'm not like a IT person or anything, but I do find digital and the development of like social networks and all that really fascinating, and so obviously the world of AI overall. Now this was a solid read, solid 3 stars. It was pretty terrifying. A lot of it I kind of already knew, but you're talking about where you've got like Google and Apple and all of that kind of ChatGPT and all the other sort of Microsoft yada yada, all fighting it out to kind of lead the race in AI, but also like what that race is going to end up doing to us and humanity. So, you know, real life horror. Solid. I need to learn to press record, because I've just chatted to you about this book for the last 10 minutes and it wasn't recording. Anywho's, I previously attempted to read this and I DNF'd it, and I thought I'll give it another go because I really do like Richard Osman. I can't even remember if I've told you or whether that was not recording me. That me and the OH listened to one of his a podcast he co-hosts called The Rest Is Entertainment, which he co-hosts with it. I can't remember the other podcaster's name, sorry. But it's really good because they talk about TV, books, movies, and a little bit behind the scenes, and it's just a nice listen. So do you know what, I thought, right, I'll give it another go, because I managed to get it on audio from the Libby app, and you follow 4 kind of unlikely friends in a retirement village, and they come together every Thursday, and they've deemed effectively what is the Thursday Murder Club as they try and solve a bit of a murder mystery. I loved the main characters. I loved the elderly MCs. I love those kind of characters as protagonists. But there was lots going on. There was lots of subplots. There was quite a lot of side characters. So I got a bit confused quite a lot. Probably says more about me. And so it was a solid 3 stars. And I have heard that like the second and third book get better. So I'm going to go into the second book and try that, because I really did really enjoy the main characters. Refresh time. I'm having sparkling water with some squeeze of lime. Next up, I finally did it. I finally did what I promised I would be doing in 2024, and it only took me till October, which was read Rachel Harrison. I have about 5 of her books and I've not read any of them. And so this was the first one to read, and I thought October was the perfect time to read this, Cackle. And I loved it. I thought it was just so much fun. We follow Annie, who's just gone through a breakup. She's devastated, so she uproots her life. She's a teacher, she moves to a small town, gets a job. And that's where she discovers a new friend called Sophie, where we figure out quite quickly that in this small town, a lot of people fear Sophie. She appears to have powerful skills in the witch department. So this is where you follow their friendship as Sophie tries to let Annie become empowered in herself rather than pining after this ex who, to be fair, I'm like, let go. This was cozy. I mean, it's called cozy horror, but I would call it cozy, witchy, spooky reads. It's not really horrific in any way. I would say it's probably a good way to get in. It's very, I mean, it's gothic vibes, it's feminist vibes, bad ex-boyfriends, coffee shops, small town vibes. I loved it, and I can't wait to read more Rachel Harrison, which I hear is not quite as cozy, but I'm here for it. Then I read The Silent House by Nell Pattison, and this was a book for a book club by Lauren and the Books, with the theme being deaf representation. I have read this book before, and so I got it out in audio just to kind of reread it relatively quickly ahead of book group. And do you know, it's, if you read a lot of thrillers, I think you might struggle with the lack of complexity in the plot. There are certain things where it did feel like a bit of a basic thriller. In saying that, the first time I read it, I didn't guess the whodunit very early on. I did start to go like, but the fact that it is written by an author with lived experience, writing about the deaf community, and the main character who works in the deaf community, she's a BSL, British Sign Language translator, and she ends up involved in this case. I have to say the main character is kind of irritating, pretty unprofessional at the time, but I did find the deaf representation really interesting, and it probably highlights a lot to people who don't have any deaf people in their life, to realise about the adaptations they have to have in their life, or that they make, just to be able to do everyday things that people wouldn't think about, like if an alarm goes off, well, it's a visual reference. And so I really liked all of that, and the murder mystery was all right. There is another one in the series after this which I think follows the main character, which I'm kind of, even though I didn't love this, I would probably say it was 2.5 stars. I'm a little bit tempted by, because it's called Silent Night and it's set like winter time with a different case, I suspect, with the same main character but unconfirmed. So I might check that out. Next up, I read The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. I adore this film, and I've never read the book until now, and I buddy read it with my friend Cheryl on Instagram, and I'm conflicted because it's amazingly well written. That sounded way more surprising than I meant it to be, but it is amazingly well written. However, a lot of the time, because you've kind of got the combination of possession, holy horror, there's kind of stuff back from, you know, like Satanism, a lot of kind of historical stuff. It did feel that sometimes the writing was a bit like an old English classic, which I generally struggle with. it's pretty graphic at times, like very, like I think the film does the film is a great adaptation. There's obviously much more in the book, but was I scared? No, I was creeped out. It was gruesome at times, but quite graphic in a kind of both violent and also like, you know, violence way. Obviously, if you've seen the film, you'll know certain things that Regan, the child who is possessed, kind of does and says, like verbally quite offensive stuff. So I'm glad I read it. Kind of gutted I didn't love it. It was a solid 3 stars. Now, I just stopped the camera there to set the record and just making sure it's definitely recording. Next up, I read Rewitched, which I've seen loads of people reading on Instagram and Book Talk, and I thought, oh, please don't let this be like overly romancy or spicy in any way, and I can confirm it's not. There is a light kind of romance element to it, but fundamentally we follow Belle, who is at her stage in life. She's running a bookshop, so it's got lovely kind of autumnal cozy vibes. But we discover that Bella, short for Belladonna, which she hates, has lost her magical spark. She's a witch, she has magic. So she's been busy trying to balance being an adult, running a bookshop, hating her toxic boss, and she is visited by basically representatives of the coven who are like, we need to take you through your paces here, because otherwise you're going to completely and utterly lose all your magic skills. Because it's her 30th birthday and it's time for them to basically make her prove her worthiness of her magic. So we go through all of that, and it is, I have to confess, much more magical and fantastical than books I normally read. But it was probably, and it's not that I don't ever read fantasy or ever read anything that is kind of magical realism. I just kind of have a cut-off point where it gets me too much for my head to compute. This was right in my wheelhouse. I loved the cozy vibes. I loved the supporting characters. This feeling of found family. It was quite uplifting. It was cozy. It was giving me absolute autumn cozy, small towny, kind of uplifting sort of female empowerment vibes. I just loved it, and I didn't expect to love it. So a solid 3.75 stars for me, because obviously I think the only thing that nudges it down for me is it is super fantasy, like it's fantasy and magical, which maybe it shouldn't. I really enjoyed it. Check it out. Then there was the third in the Frendo Clown of a Cornfield trilogy, and well, I don't know if it's a trilogy, it may go beyond. It's quite a chunk. It just came out in the end of September, I think. Clown in a Cornfield, The Church of Frendo by Adam Cesare. Solid. Seemed longer than it needed to be. It was wilder. Feels young adult slasher vibes. I would say young adult. I mean, this is decent horror for adults. So the body count gets higher, the kills get more gruesome. It was a wild ride and a solid read. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read, wait till you see the cover. Again, this is sort of more fantastical and witchy than I would normally read. And it was Invocations by Krystal Sutherland. Look at this. Stunning. This was my Evernight edition. I actually read most of it on audio, and we follow these 3 characters who have their own very challenging lives. You have Zara, who is kinda on the hunt for whoever killed her sister. We believe there's a supernatural serial killer in this, and she's desperate to bring her sister back from the dead. Then we have Jude Wolfe, who is from a very rich, privileged family, but she's kind of like the rebel and undeniably cursed, is how she's described, after she kind of made a deal with a demon that kind of went wrong. but she also desperate to kind of fix that deal that went wrong by finding someone that can help. And there we look at, for both of them, Emmer, who apparently the solution be both of Sarah and Jude's predicaments, whilst they collectively together come to identify the supernatural serial killer, who seems to be taking, only women can have magical powers, and this killer seems to be taking them away. There's lots of societal commentary around misogyny, the patriarchy, especially how women don't feel safe walking alone at night or doing certain things, and how they're being targeted for their powers, and just how women should and do refuse to go quietly at night. This is dark, witchy, serial killer thriller, and I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it a solid 4 out of 5 stars. Next was, where have I got it? Just Like Home, which I gave a solid 4.5 out of 5. You follow Vera, who returns to her family or childhood home with her estranged mother. Her mother is at the end of life, and the home was built by her father and her mother's husband, obviously, who also we discover was a serial killer. And so there's lots of trauma in that return. It jumps from present day to past, where we discover we discover kind of what her dad got up to, and also Vera's relationship with her father as a child, as well as the uncomfortable, estranged relationship with her mother back in the past and then in today. It is creepy, haunted house, serial killer vibes, which was so uniquely written. It was haunting, it was disturbing, it was graphic at times, but it was so clever. I really enjoyed this. It says a lot about kind of nature versus nurture, family secrets, the home, the place that is just like home, that holds many, many dark secrets. Darkly disturbing, and I really enjoyed it. Then I read, where is it? Oh. Delicate Condition. Where have I put it? Here it is. Put it back in my shelf instead of my read list. Oh, now this is what the latest season of American Horror Story is based on, which I think is just called Delicate. This is Delicate Edition by Danielle Valentine, and it is basically deemed a modern day feminist Rosemary's Baby. Do not read this and skip ahead if you're at all triggered by infertility, pregnancy, childbirth, any of those things. Do not watch until you see me pick up another book and in this chat, and don't read it. So we follow Anna. I have to always check their names because I've read so many books I forget who's who in each of the books. She is a kind of public figure, an actor who's up for an award. So she has this public life, but privately she's really going through the challenges of wanting to become a mother and get pregnant. There's challenges with that, so she's going through the really sort of difficult journey of IVF, and that's where she then eventually becomes pregnant. You kind of go on that journey with her. It's quite graphic at times, but unfortunately then the pregnancy ends, and as you can imagine there's a lot of trauma and upset around that. However, she then starts to think that her body and a few other things are telling her are contradicting the fact that she is no longer pregnant, and she's convinced that she is, whilst at the same time she's also convinced she's been stalked by someone that she keeps seeing intermittently in different places, who's also, there's someone like accessing her online appointments and calendars and almost trying to stop her from either having a child or to warn her about something. And so we go through this journey of where she just feels like she's been absolutely gaslit, and at the same time she thinks she's pregnant. Meanwhile, everybody's telling her she's not. It's dark. There's body horror in here. This leads up to something that I didn't quite guess until kind of closer to the end, and I would say the end felt a wee bit rushed and not quite living up to how this whole story built up to. However, it was amazingly terrifying, twisty, and not a book for the faint-hearted. I really enjoyed it. I gave it a solid 4 out of 5 stars. The books are piling up. I only have 2 more to tell you about, and this one was an absolute Scottish delight. It is The Haar by David Sodergren, and don't judge it by the cover, to be fair, right? This is reflective of something in the book, but I do think the cover's a bit of a letdown, if I'm honest. And I don't pick up books, but, well, I do. I pick up, and this is probably why I hadn't picked this up for ages. However, I'd seen a few people talk about it on Book Talk, and I was like, this is a Scottish book. And it's about set in kind of remote part of the north of Scotland. I'm definitely reading that. So I picked it up. And we have, so it's set in the Scottish fishing village, which I just assumed was in the north of Scotland, but it could be anywhere, to be fair. We have Muriel, who lives in this village. She was born there, she got married there, and she's convinced she's going to die there, despite the fact you have this sort of billionaire that gave me like Trump vibes, who's come in and buying up the land and trying to get everybody to just sell their land to her, and she won't. She refuses to do it. And she's pretty much one of the few people left that are kind of going against this billionaire who's determined just to own the land and it looks like, you know, she's not going to be able to hold it out much longer. And then there's this foggy mist that comes across the Haar, which is known as, like, I don't know if you get this in other countries, excuse my ignorance. It's what we call in Scotland like a kind of sea fog creeps into the inland. And Muriel discovers this kind of creature of some sort on the beach, and she takes it home, puts it in her bath, and this creature is a creature feature, starts to relate to her and almost emit a part of her. Well, her husband died 12 years ago, so she kind of harbours onto that. And you start to get gothic folklore vibes from the story about the creature and the purpose of that creature, and also her stance about being able to kind of hold her own and not be chased out of her own home. It's graphic. One of my favourite, because it says it up here, is just what it says it up here. One of my favourite quotes from Muriel, because she's an elderly woman, I think she's in her 80s, and she's like, I don't fear death, but they do. Was that from Muriel, or was it from the creature feature? I can't remember. The creature feature, I call. I adored this. I thought this was really well written. I loved the setting. I loved the creature. I love the eeriness. I love the kicking it to the man. Absolutely delightful. I just wish I had a different cover. And then last but not least, a 5-star read. I literally finished it today and I'm like, this was phenomenal. It's taken me, if you've seen it in any of my weekend reading vlogs, you'll have seen that I've kind of been reading this since the end of September. Was it no longer than that? I've been reading it since September, and it hasn't taken me ages because I'm not enjoying it. It's just because it's been on my Kindle and I've been dipping in and out of it when I've been reading it. At Home with the Horrors by Sammy Scott. I got this on Kindle Unlimited, so I've been reading it on my Kindle, and it is a collection of horrifying tales, which is, it's kind of sold as a a collection of stories that delve into the deep dark side of human behaviour and human experience. Often where, and I can tell this from the different stories that I read, there's a kind of blurring between reality and the supernatural, but in actual fact, a lot of the horror comes from the reality of day-to-day life, of grief, the horrors that lurk within our own being that terrify us. I am not normally a big short story reader, and I ended up picking this one up because I think I'd heard a booktuber, I can't remember who, or book talker talk about this and rate it really highly, and I'd kind of gone in not realising it was a collection of short stories. But I am struggling to say that any one of these short stories didn't make my jaw drop or make me feel tense or make me feel irky, like the last one, which was a slightly longer one of many of them. Like, some of them made me gasp out loud. Like, normally when I read short stories, there's always ones that maybe love, thought were okay, or meh. I loved all of these. They touched on so many topics that as humans you can't not but relate to. I think at the very end it is a novella, which I really enjoyed. It's dark and it gave me the chills. There's so many stories in this book that I was like, oh, that's my favourite, and then you would read another and go, oh. I've just remembered the booktuber. I think it was Gabby Reeds who recommended this, and why I ended up on my Kindle, and it's been there for ages and it's taken me so long to pick it up. Overall, I just thought this was a dark, creepy, haunting, terrifying, disturbing collection of amazing horror stories. If you like horror and you want to get creeped out, read this book. And I'm so chuffed I got a 5 stars. At first I was like, is it 5 stars? And I was like, god damn it, yeah, because other than, I think the last, I say I don't read like short stories, I do, just not very often. The last short story collection I gave 5 stars was You Like It Darker by Stephen King, and this is on a par. If not, there was at least like, there was maybe 1 or 2 in Stephen King's where I was like, but yeah, amazing. That's about this book. And overall, I think I've had a blooming good month. I would love to know in the comments, what have you read this month? What did you love? What did you not like? Have you read any of these books I've talked about? Do you want to read any of these books I've talked about? And oh my goodness, can you believe that is the end of official spooky season? Spooky season for me is all year round, but we're getting into the month of November very soon, if not already, depending when you're watching it, and that means we're getting into seasonal reads and recommendations coming your way. But overall, that was October. I had a pretty good one overall, and I look forward to reading even more. I'll probably carry on the spooky vibes into November with a mix of contemporary and historical fiction, because some of those are covering my book groups or book club reads for the next month, and I'll keep you posted on what I'm reading. But do give me a chat in the comments, let me know what you thought of this video. Is there any here that you want to read that you've not read, or you were like read it and thought, I didn't like that, why did you? Let me know. I'd love to chat to you in the comments. And so thank you as always for watching, for liking, and if you don't, please do subscribe. And until next time, I'll see you on the flip side that is November. Bye!